video talking about the Trojan War, specifically the fall of Troy. So this is the second half of our Trojan War discussion. So we read about the first 9 years of the war in chapter 13 of our Hamilton book, where she talks about Achilles and Hector and all of that good stuff, the judgment of Paris. Now we're talking about the fall of Troy. This is chapter 14, and there's a lot to go into here, so we're just going to jump right into it. So chapter 13 primarily just sort of followed the Iliad, like what happens in the Iliad. And if you remember, the Iliad takes place in the ninth year of the Trojan War. The Trojan War takes place over 10 years, and the Iliad took place in the ninth year. Basically, the Greek army at this point had been camped around the walls of Troy, trying to lay siege to it, trying to break down the walls of Troy. But the walls of Troy were famous for being impenetrable. There was nothing that was going to ever break the walls of Troy. And so we just ended with Achilles, the greatest hero of the Greeks, killing Hector, the greatest hero of the Trojans. And so we pick up in the fall of Troy with Paris sort of, I guess, getting revenge on Achilles for killing his brother Hector. Paris is not a good fighter, but he is a really good archer. And so he manages to shoot Achilles in the one spot that was weak, which was his heel. Because when his mother, Thetis, took him down to the river Styx when he was a baby, at the gate of the underworld, she dipped baby Achilles into the river Styx to try to make him immortal, make him invulnerable. But she covered his heel with her thumb, meaning that that spot was the one spot that could be pierced. That was the one spot that could be hurt. And sure enough, that's the place where the arrow hit from Paris's bow. Now, some people give credit to Paris for shooting Achilles and killing Achilles and say that Paris is the guy who killed Achilles. Some people say it's Apollo because Apollo guided the arrow to Achilles' heel. So you can make the case one way or the other. If you don't like Paris, you can just say Apollo is the one who did it. But once Achilles dies, that means there is a big void in the leadership of the Greek army. Obviously, there's Agamemnon, who's the commander-in-chief, but he's not really going out and doing a ton of fighting, that's really like winning the war for the Greeks. Like usually we need champions to do that. So you got Diomedes, you got Ajax, you got Odysseus. So the two top heroes for the Greeks are Ajax and Odysseus. And so they start a quarrel over who gets Achilles' armor. Because Achilles, if you remember, had his armor taken by Patroclus, and Patroclus pretended to be Achilles and rallied the Greeks and then was killed by Hector. Hector then took the armor off of Patroclus and wore it, and then Achilles had no armor. So Achilles' mother Thetis went to Hephaestus, the god of the forge, and asked him to make some new armor for her son. And so Achilles had this shiny, awesome, golden, beautiful armor that was impenetrable. And he wore that when he fought and killed Hector. So now the quarrel is over who gets this fancy, shiny armor, right? That is made by the gods themselves. And so Ajax and Odysseus are the two who essentially start quarreling over it. So again, once more in this story, we have people who should be above this sort of thing bickering over basically who gets the shiny thing, right? First it was the goddesses with the golden apple. Now it's Odysseus and Ajax over who gets Achilles' armor. And Ajax says that he's the worthy deserver of the armor because he's the one who's been doing basically the bulk of the fighting. Odysseus says, no, I've been fighting too, and it's all of my strategies and stuff that means we're still here and we're not defeated yet. Eventually, it comes down to a vote, and Odysseus manages to basically win over the Greeks, and the Greeks vote that Odysseus deserves the armor. This makes Ajax very mad, so he goes out and determines to fight something. And this is when Athena sends a cloud of madness over him. So this is similar to when Hera sent a cloud of madness over Hercules, and he killed his family. She does the same thing. Athena does the same thing to Ajax. Ajax gets a cloud of madness, and he starts attacking everything in sight. He feels like he's fighting just a bunch of different people. And then the cloud gets lifted over his eyes. And just like how Hercules, came to his senses and realizes that he just murdered his family, Ajax realizes that he has just killed a bunch of livestock. He tied up a ram to a tree and beat it to death. And so Ajax is obviously ashamed by all this. He feels guilty and stupid, and so he kills himself. And so that's now Ajax gone. So the top two Greek heroes, Ajax and Achilles, are now gone, and it's just really Diomedes and Odysseus who are left to fight for the Greeks. And so they go and they talk to basically someone who can see the future, and they say that, what can we do to stop the Trojans? And they say, you need the bow of Hercules. And so the man who has the bow of Hercules is a man named Philoctetes, who is the guy who, if you remember, killed Hercules. Mercy killed him. He put him out of his misery when he was dying from the Hydra poison. And so Philoctetes then took the bow of Hercules along with all of the Hydra-dipped arrows. And so they go to the island where Philoctetes is. He had been bitten by a snake and he was recuperating. So they take him to Troy. They heal him back. They bring him back to health. And Philoctetes goes into battle. And so Philoctetes, his first real success once he goes into the battle is he finds Paris and he shoots him. And remember, these are the arrows that are dipped in the blood of the Hydra, meaning that they are poisonous. And so Paris is in excruciating pain, very much like Hercules was. And he goes crawling back to the nymph that he was cohabitating with, a nymph of the hills. Her name is Oenone. And he goes back to Oenone and he's like, please help me. I'm dying. I'm in excruciating pain. Please heal me. Use your nymph magic to bring me back to life. And Oenone kind of looks at him and says, Psh, what? No, you ditched me for Helen, the so-called most beautiful woman on earth. No, I'm not going to heal you. And so basically, Oenone looks at Paris as he is in excruciating pain. And even though she could help him if she chose, she basically tells Paris to just drop dead, literally, because she's, feels slighted, her heart was broken, all that stuff. So Paris is now dead. But the Greeks are no closer to getting into the walls of Troy. How do they get into the walls of Troy? They hear about this icon. It's basically a little wooden statue of Athena. It's called the Palladium. And so if they can sneak into Troy in the middle of the night and steal the Palladium, which is supposed to be like protecting the city, then maybe Troy will be vulnerable. And so that's exactly what Odysseus and Diomedes do. The top two Greek heroes sneak into Troy. They basically say, this is an awesome Black Ops mission. We're going to go in, get out, heist mission. And they manage to steal the Palladium and they bring it back to the Greek camp. And it's in the process of doing this that Odysseus comes up with a plan. Obviously, they have not been able to batter down the walls of Troy. They're too big, they're too strong. There's no way they're getting over the walls of Troy. So what if they can somehow find another way? They use strategy. This is where Odysseus comes in. He says, well, what if we had a big wooden horse and we had a bunch of soldiers in it and we managed to convince the Trojans to bring the horse into the city? Well, sure enough, the Greeks, hash out the details of the plan, and then they decide to follow through with it. So the next day, the Trojans go down to the beach, and they see the Greek camp is completely gone. There are no more ships. The Greeks have completely deserted the beach. They are all gone. And the only thing that is left on the beach is a giant wooden horse, right? But there are no ships. There are no tents. There are no soldiers. The entire Greek army is completely gone. And so what happens is that all the Trojans start asking themselves, well, where did the Greek army go? Why is there a big wooden horse here? What is going on? This is very confusing. I don't understand. I thought we were at war 5 seconds ago. But none of the Trojans are really knowing what to do with this giant wooden horse that's been left behind. Do we take it into the city? Do we just leave it here on the beach? Do we chop it up for firewood? Do we burn it? What do we do? Well, Odysseus thought about this, and he left a guy to lie to the Greeks, this guy that he's leaving behind to sort of sell what to do with the Trojan horse. And this guy's name is Sinon. And so Odysseus tells Sinon this big lie that he wants him to tell King Priam, because King Priam himself actually comes down to the beach and looks at the wooden horse. And so he is dragged before King Priam, and Sinon basically says, well, the Greeks were going to sacrifice me, but I managed to get away. But obviously I hate the Greeks now. And I'm going to tell you what the wooden horse is and why the wooden horse is here. And he says basically that Athena is mad at the Greeks for stealing the Palladium from the Trojans, and so she cursed them. She cursed the Greeks with a plague, and so the Greeks left to go back to Greece, make a bunch of sacrifices, and try to win back the favor of Athena. So they got on their ships, and they sailed all back to Greece, and they left this gigantic, conspicuous wooden horse as a peace offering to Athena. And they want to make sure that, Athena's on their side again. So they all left and went back to Greece. And so King Priam's like, oh, yes, that makes plenty of sense. And so Sinon's obviously trying to establish that this wooden horse is an offering to Athena. Well, the Trojans have this gigantic temple to Athena. And so King Priam is already having the wheels turning in his head, was like, well, if this is left as an offering for Athena, wouldn't it be great if we could take this giant wooden horse and bring it into the city and leave it next to our giant temple of Athena, where obviously Athena would, love it. And Athena would now start fighting for the Trojans, and she would, be happy. And so Priam likes that. However, there's a guy named Laocoon. Laocoon and his two sons walk up to King Priam and basically say, beware of Greeks bearing gifts. I don't trust the wooden horse. I don't trust the situation. Something smells fishy about this. Something sounds wrong about all of this. I don't like this at all. And Laocoon is almost to the point of persuading the Trojans not to take the wooden horse into the city. He is almost to the point of doing that when, all of a sudden, angry Poseidon sends giant water snakes to wrap themselves around Laocoon and his sons and strangle them to death and kill them and drag their bodies out to the temple of Athena, which is a pretty strong sign to King Priam. Hey, that's an omen that we should maybe bring the horse into our city. We should maybe bring the wooden horse into the city, because clearly the gods want us to, right? Because they just killed the guy telling us not to. And so that's what Priam does. He takes this as a big sign that the gods don't want him to bring the horse into the city, or that they do. And so Priam brings the horse into the city. So in the middle of the night, we all know the story. The Greek soldiers are all in the belly of the wooden horse. And so in the middle of the night, when all the Trojans are snoozing, the Greeks drop out of the wooden horse and they open the gates so that the rest of the Greek army, which was hiding on an island in the middle of the night, had sailed back in the middle of the night to surround the city. They open the gates for the Greek army. The Greek army comes running through, and now the city of Troy is fallen. And now all the Trojans who were sleeping and thinking they just won the war are now stabbed in their beds. And so this is where basically it's just a big slaughter. The Greeks kill everybody they see, everybody they run across. You have Pyrrhus, who is Achilles' son. He's basically a hot-headed teenager, similar to his father, just very hot-headed, very angry, always searching for revenge. So he decides to take his revenge out on King Priam, who tries to defend himself, but obviously he's no match for Pyrrhus because Priam is old. And so Pyrrhus kills him, and most of the Trojans die too. Now, some of the Trojans make a fight. They put on Greek armor and they pretend to be Greeks, and then they stab Greeks in the back. Sometimes they put on Greek armor and escape that way. But most of the Trojans die. Most of Priam's children die. Most of Priam's daughters are enslaved by the Greek soldiers and are shipped back to Greece to be slaves back in Greece. The only person who really escapes, who is of note, who is noteworthy as a Trojan hero, is Aeneas. Okay, Aeneas, who, if you remember, was a son of Aphrodite. He was a great Trojan prince. He was a good hero for the Trojan side. He carries his crippled father on his back and takes his son by the hand and manages to escape the city as it's burning to the ground because Aphrodite is sort of guiding them to safety. And he takes a few of his men and they get on a ship and they leave. And this is where, if you know anything about classical literature, Aeneas goes on his own little odyssey. It's called the Aeneid. And eventually he winds up in Italy, founds the city of Rome. But that is the story of the fall of Troy. As I said, most of the Trojans die. Most of the Trojan women are enslaved and shipped back to Greece. And if you are a Greek hero, then now you have to go back home. And there's a whole bunch of homecomings that the Greeks embark on, such as Odysseus and Agamemnon, where various things happen to them on the way home. But that's the stuff that's most important for